but we wish we could be seeing your faces and responding to you directly, but that's not the hand that we've been dealt, and we have to deal with what we have. I want to welcome everybody, and I especially want to welcome any new faculty and students who are on the call. I look forward to getting to know you all, and I want you to feel part of the Gillings community. And we've been having many discussions about how to keep the strong sense of community that we have. We're going to give you some ideas about that today as we talk, but we also want to hear from you. I mean, you are the people that we're here to serve, and so, you know, we know that there are a lot of good ideas out there, and we want to be responsive to them. I also want to say, I know this is a really hard time for everybody. Nobody has the answers. You know, we haven't seen this in this kind of a situation since 1918. And the world was a really different place then, and none of us were around. So we're all feeling our way through this. We're trying to use science. We're trying to use feedback from our community and other communities, and we're doing our best to get it right, but we are not going to get everything right. And we're going to hopefully have the humility to admit when we don't have it right. We're going to change. Universities all over the country are having to change what they're planning to do. I don't know if UNC will end up pivoting as we talk about and going all remote at some point, but the numbers don't look good, and so we're really trying to be adaptable and kind and supportive and live with this current reality. I know it's really hard for students who came here to have a residential experience, and we're going to do the best we can to have as much a feeling of residential as we can, and to have outdoor activities and spaces and Zoom spaces. And you'll hear more about what we're doing for students. And I know that it's really been hard on many of our faculty, staff, and students in terms of family members who've had COVID, who've died from COVID, people who have lost jobs. This is all hitting very close to home. And you're not just numbers for us. You're people with very complex lives. So I want to acknowledge that. And yet we have to go on, and we have to live with this. We want to deliver a quality education that really meets the needs of every student. So we're going to keep moving through this. You're going to hear from Brent Wishart about some of the ways in which we've been changing our buildings to make them as safe as possible. We have some of the world's expert epidemiologists and air quality people and behavioral scientists, and they're advising at all levels of government and the university and we're trying to take advantage of that knowledge. Laurel and Ann, Greg Bacchino, and many faculty and staff have been getting ready for courses. And, you know, for faculty and staff, we recognize that it's a whole new world. You're not just creating your classes for one format in person, say, you're creating classes for synchronous, asynchronous, in person, and to meet the needs of people who may be in the United States and other countries in different time zones. So it's a lot more work than it used to be, and I think we're really conscious of just how hard it has been to keep up with all of this and all the changing policies. A couple of weeks ago, we had to respond to the messages from the White House about international students, when we were really worried that our international students were not going to be able to get back, were not going to be able to be part of the Gillings community. And a number of people from this school, including Naya Villarreal, who's not able to be here today, and Peggy Bentley, and people in the global office of UNC worked really hard. We advocated with our organizations, and thankfully the policy was rescinded. And it's a reminder that standing up to Washington sometimes works, and maybe we're in a better position for that now. We're also really conscious of the intersection between this pandemic and structural racism and all the inequities that have been really laid bare by this pandemic. About 400 people from Gillings participated in Racial Equity Institute training not very long ago, a couple weeks ago, a 4-hour training session, which I think was really helpful to us in thinking about structural racism. And just as an indication of the chancellor's commitment, all of his senior leaders, including me and other deans, participated in a day and a half of training, which focused very strongly on structural racism. So, and while all of this is going on, we have many people in the school and a laboratory of Ralph Baric and a number of colleagues who work in that laboratory who are working on vaccines and therapeutics for COVID-19 and for coronavirus. So, you know, there's a lot to be proud of in this school. And for those of you who are new students, I think what I want you to take away too is, yeah, it's a really hard time, but there's never been a better time in the world to be in public health. And, you know, and I feel as privileged now to be in public health as when I first, well, even more so than when I first got into this profession. And, you know, we may never be called upon quite the way we are now to really step up. And so while we're afraid for ourselves and the people we care about and our families, this is a time to really be brave and not stupid, of course, to wear our masks and to do all the other things, but really to venture out and try to do what we can about this pandemic. I was, before this meeting, I was on a meeting of the Carolina Collective where we were reviewing crowdsourced suggestion ideas that students, faculty, and staff had put forward for ways to intervene on the pandemic. And there's so much creativity in this community, including the Gillings School. And I really look forward to focusing on the positive as well as what's so frightening about all this. And we want to answer your questions, and I'm going to have to ask a question of the group here. Does anybody have the questions handy so we can proceed? Chrisana, do you have them? We didn't expect Elizabeth to be off for so long.
Barbara, I'm here.
Oh, you are? Okay, good.
Back.
I didn't see your face, so I'm glad that you're back.
Yep, we
Okay,
have,
I'll turn it back over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you. And yes, today of all days, I am having internet problems, of course. And thank you for jumping into the breach and taking over. I don't know how much of the run of show and protocols you shared with us,
No,
but
I didn't.
Okay, Chrisana and I will do that. First of all, I want to thank our amazing behind the scenes team. You can see them on the screen. They include Chrisana Hughes, Angelica Figueroa, Grace Quattaro, and Corey Sanders, and Deshana Kabasan. And there's a lot of work that goes into these, and they have really helped support us. And in a moment, I'm going to ask Chrisana to tell you some of the reasons and some of the ways we are using this Zoom webinar format to try to make it more interactive. One thing I want to say is we have had COVID conversations with faculty, staff, and then with students, because we have thought of those as meeting very different needs. But we wanted to bring all of you together for this purpose because we wanted each group to hear exactly what we were saying to all the others, so that we are being as transparent as we possibly can. As Barbara said, we won't have all the answers. We've tried to assemble the right knowledge experts here today to help us navigate some of the questions you will have. Some of the questions may belong here and be answerable at the School of Public Health level. Questions may come that are more appropriate to the university level and even to the UNC system level. And Barbara can explain that when those crop up. We have a couple of more people who will be joining our panel as time goes on today because they have specific knowledge and interests. Like Barb Turpin is going to join us to talk about aerosols and what we're doing in the building about aerosols and what they mean for us. Okay, now for our protocols. On this call. So you'll see that we have the Q&A function. We're going to use the Q&A function also as a chat function so that you can all see the questions that are coming in and all see the answers that are coming in. You can raise your hand if you want to come on screen and ask us a question verbally or make a comment verbally, you know, with your voice, and so that we can see you. That's another way we're trying to be more interactive in this session. Chrisanna, can you share other features?
Yeah, so we heard your feedback and we wanted to try and make this more interactive. So we ask that you use the Q&A function more as a chat. Everyone will be able to see anything you send in, everyone watching. There's also an upvote feature which will allow us to know which questions or comment you really want to be addressed. Also, you can raise your hand and Elizabeth will call on people and allow them to talk during the webinar so we can hear all of your feedback.
Yes. Actually, I'm going to ask Chrisanna to tell me who to call on.
Yes.
She is using the chat function and there are a bunch of people on the back end using the chat function to handle logistics. So thank you for your patience with us. All right, let's get started on some of the questions. We received a bunch of questions in advance and they helped us figure out who should be on this call. And I'll start with those and then we'll start monitoring the questions as they come into the Q&A. So we will start by talking about safety protocols and potential off-ramps, since there were many questions about that. And I'm going to turn first to Taya and Brent and to ask them about precautions for immunocompromised students, faculty, and staff. And Brent may have a few slides he's going to share with us about the building, because part of that is how we're going to be protecting people. Okay, take it away. Uh-oh, Brent, now we can't hear you. We heard you so beautifully before. I'm going to go off screen, see if that helps. Okay, we have lost Brent. Taya, could you kick us off?
Hello, and welcome to the Gillings Conversations. And as Barbara and Elizabeth have said, we want this to be more conversational. We know that there are a lot of concerns and anxieties that we all have about things that are so uncertain with COVID-19. And so Brent has prepared some slides for us to kind of walk through to allow you to see how we've upfit the building with signs and opportunities for you to meet your colleagues and your fellow peers outside. What I'd like to say is that I've read through some of the questions, and I think that, again, you'll find that the panelists will provide you some real answers. And again, we can only give you what we know, but again, it's always good to hear how we can improve upon what we need to do. I don't really have any more information as far as the safety of the building, and what I would ask is, I know that Kathy has done a walkthrough with Brent, if she can kind of give a quick update on some things to for you to look forward to when you return to campus.
Okay, so I'm happy to do that. Do we have Brent on, or do we have the pictures of some of the spaces?
Kathy, I don't see Brent.
Okay, so I'm assuming he's having some trouble.
Yep.
Okay. So here are some transportation pieces of information about getting to the Gillings School. The transit changes are beginning soon, as you see, August 3rd. The bus system has dropped to 10% maximum per bus. We know that there are a fair number of concerns about that. When there are wait times, Chapel Hill Transit will add buses to accommodate traffic. And there have been some multiple route changes. I think there is a website where you can get more reference information on that. Next slide, please. Parking permits. At the moment, the school at the university is open with respect to parking. So that's through the end of this week. Permits start August 1st, as you see. There are reduced costs for anyone who is not working full-time, 3 days or less per week. There will be reduced costs if you already have a permit. And the old hang tag system is going away. Instead, you need to park with your license plate visible, and parking will validate that you are parked legally by looking at your license plate. What we're excited about is that parking is going to try and accommodate and take advantage of the fact that many of us will not be there 5 days a week as we normally are, by offering an additional number of daily permit options. We don't have any detail on that, but there you see the web page link, and you can continue to try and keep up with developments in this area. Okay, I'm just checking to see if Brent is back yet.
I don't see him.
Okay, so we'll keep going. If you look at photos of the buildings, which you'll see momentarily, there's a lot of signage. The major building entrances are marked. Some entrances that you might not be able to get into, that they've now been blocked, and they're either entrance or egress. But you should be able to get in and follow the signs. And for right now, there is. You enter on the one card reader sign. We have physical distancing in elevators, 1 per person, and we ask people who are able to take the stairs. And there is signage on the floors. Most hallways are designated as 2-way. There are a couple of narrow ones that are 1-way. There's one between Rosenau and McGavran Greenberg on the 2nd floor. Okay, next one. Physical distancing floor signs around the Gillings complex. I think Brent has been showing these slides quite a bit. Keep going.
I'm back on if y'all.
There he is.
Sorry.
No worries, Brent. I'm hoping that you can just pick up.
Sure. Did y'all already talk about parking?
I did. I just went with what's on the slide. Is there
Okay.
anything that you need to add that's not on the slide?
I just wanted to be sure that folks know. Let's go back to it. So, parking has instituted several changes this year. The parking year has started a little bit earlier. I would definitely encourage folks to log on to the parking page and make sure that they have your most recent, your current license plate information, because that is the way that they are going to check to see whether or not you're supposed to be here or not. There will not be any hang tags, which is certainly a big change from previous years. And also there will be a reduced cost. I'm sure you covered this already, I'm sorry. But if you're going to be on campus or working in a lot where you're parking in a campus lot 3 days or less per week, there will be a reduced fee structure. That's all posted online, or you can get that from your parking coordinator in your department.
Hey, Brent, I'm just giving a reminder to you and to all the panelists to, let's say, who we are when we first come on. So
Okay.
I'm an assistant dean for strategic initiatives. And Kathy, you are?
I am the associate dean for IT and project planning.
Great. And Brent.
And I am the facilities manager and chair of the infrastructure planning team here. So we've been very busy.
Brent, while you're on transportation, there's a question in the Q&A, which I think we might answer live. How will the transportation department be notified about who will be teleworking?
So originally, when your parking coordinator updated the parking assignments, they indicated that on a best guess. So if your schedule has changed, or you know that you're definitely going to be on campus, either 3 days or less, I would just send a quick note to your parking coordinator, and they can make sure that that's current in the system. So here we have some signs from lots and lots of floor signs, door signs around the complex. The floor signage, sort of those blue round circles with the 2 feet on there, sort of indicate spacing. You don't have to stand on them every time you're in the hallway. It's basically just to sort of give you a sense of the appropriate spacing between people. In this slide, we can see outside of the cafe, they have some signage inside the cafe, and the third picture shows sort of the 1-way signage on that central staircase in the atrium. So it's just encouraging you to sort of hug the edges of the staircase. Next slide. We've separated seating in the atrium so that you can have plenty of spacing. It's a big space. This is really the only space in the building where you can really sit and eat. And we ask that you sit by yourself to do that. Don't pull chairs together. A few more signs. There's signs on the outside indicating where the entrances are. Here's some pictures where we've pulled seating. The middle picture is from the 4th floor of McGavin Greenberg. There's normally 6 seats out there. Now there's 3. The reading balcony in the atrium now just has 2 seats. There's one on either side of the table. You can see on the floor where there's one of the floor signs to sort of indicate where the chairs should remain for appropriate spacing.
Brent, there was a
Yes.
question about how often the railings on stairs are being cleaned. I know you have
So-
the answer to that one.
So they are supposed to be cleaned 4 times during the day. And then the night crew goes through and does a very deep cleaning of all of the public spaces.
Thank you.
This is a picture of the Blue Cross and Blue Shield Foundation Auditorium and MHRC. You can see the seat count has been dramatically reduced.
Can you talk about how whether and how there will be community protective equipment like masks, etc., and what our expectation is when people go to class about what they can expect in
Yeah,
terms
so
of cleaning?
campus is providing care kits, and those will be distributed to us hopefully next week. And we will be distributing those to the departments to distribute to students. Those will include masks and some hand sanitizer. The masks will be 2 cloth masks. We will have sort of emergency backup masks on site. The station will be in the Michael Hooker Research Center atrium near the front door. So if you're on the bus or you're walking to the building or you're in class and your mask string breaks, you will have the ability to go grab one from the atrium if you need one in a pinch. For faculty and staff, there will also be care kits that will have masks and hand sanitizer. And we'll also, you know, the masks that will be extras on hand in the building will be for anyone who needs them.
Great.
There'll also be signage around the building that will direct you to that location.
Okay, what measures are being taken to protect the people who clean the facilities?
So they are definitely provided with masks, gloves, safety training. You know, Gloria, who is our daytime housekeeper, stops by and lets me know that she's always got her mask on. I was just talking to her this morning, and we were talking about that, you know, she doesn't mind wearing it and that she feels safe. And you know, anytime they need something extra, I'll definitely be helping them find that. But as far as it appears at this point, housekeeping is providing all the necessary protective measures for their staff.
And Brent, if I could just add, the other day when we had, when the deans met with the provost, I said I knew there were a lot of concerns about housekeeping staff, and we're very, you know, our housekeeping staff are us, and we really care about them a lot. And I said, you know, we're hearing that they don't have enough protective equipment, and he assured me that if there is something they need, that it will be purchased for them. And if we hear otherwise, we will speak up about it.
Yeah, definitely. But at this point, I have not heard actually concerns from the people working in our buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, let's see. What about, where did the question go? There was a question about whether the buildings will be open for studying.
I'm sorry, I nabbed that question and answered online, but Brent, I think we may want to elaborate on it because it's a very common question.
Yeah, so there will be, we're still working on locations to spread out studying. So there will be some more information coming out on where you will be able to find study spaces. You're definitely welcome to find seating in the atrium, take advantage of the additional outdoor seating. What we would ask you not to do is to sit in the floor in the hallway and find a plug. That would not be a good spot to try to camp out. But we will have some information online that will have a whole list of different locations.
Great. Let's see. There was also, a question. Are we able to contact facilities for floor signs in our areas?
Definitely. So just shoot me an email, brent.wishart@unc.edu. We have plenty on hand. Campus is providing additional ones. So anything that you need or have a question about, feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to come by and see what we think you need and what would work in that location.
Great. Thank you, Brent. Here's a question. There are several people who refuse to wear face masks. How is this being handled?
So just this morning, we had a situation where somebody came into the building without a mask, and we have a security guard on duty, and it typically is not a problem. So as soon as you say, don't forget you need to have your mask on, they, reach for it and put it on immediately. Campus has a policy in place so that if a student comes to campus and comes to class and refuses to wear a mask, the professor is able to, say you have to put a mask on. If the student refuses, we can contact our security guard. That security guard can escort them from the building. And then there are a number of measures that campus has implemented depending on, the reaction from the student about refusal to wear the mask, but not wearing a mask is not going to be an option.
And there's also going to be a major campaign that will take place around campus with posters and messaging and really trying to put the emphasis on positive reinforcement for wearing a mask so that we're making wearing a mask the normal thing to do rather than, yes, we will punish people if they don't wear them, but we'd rather people see it as something they owe the community and the community owes them to keep everybody safe. I don't know if Kurt is on the call, but he's been involved with that campaign.
Barbara, I don't see him on the call. We were just speaking at 11:30 and he had certainly intended to, and he was going to talk about that campaign.
Well, if he should, I'll email him.
Yeah, I emailed him. We'll call on him if and when he gets on.
Okay, great.
Okay. Let's see. Can you clarify whether entry into the building will require swiping your one card, A, and B, will all buildings across campus be open?
So the expectation is that buildings will be open starting on August 10th. So if you come into the building before then, you will need your one card to access the building.
Okay, great. All right, Kurt actually just popped onto the call. There's nothing like putting him in the hot seat right when we get here, but Kurt, can you talk about some of the communications campaigns that you are working on with others across campus to help rather than simply take a punishment approach, to take a more inspirational, we're all in this together approach?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Yeah, there's been a group, this the Public Health Education Working Group of Carolina Together, and I've been meeting with that group for about two and a half months. It is a real challenge to present this information. As Brent was saying about, it's not an option to avoid wearing a face mask, and we've really got to promote face covering. So one of the key things we focused on 3 key behaviors, but face covering being the most prominent one. Secondly, also hand washing, and thirdly, social distancing. And so there's a video, which I think Christina may be able to show in a moment, that came out that we have been working on, and incorporates behavioral science principles, which, we'll show it in just a second, but it incorporates behavioral science principles to role model and use social cognitive theory to really encourage people, show people wearing a mask, asking reasons why they're wearing a mask. It does acknowledge that masks are not fun to wear, but there's a greater good that is served by wearing masks. We have about 40 to 50 people from multiple departments across campus working on these campaigns. They've got a whole signage plan, very similar to what Brent showed, for all over campus. Is going to be blanketed. We're going to have a new Mask of the Week campaign that they're going to get advertising space and profile people and interview them to, again, create a social norm. There's been a talk about trying to avoid heavy-handed enforcement, and that's what we really want to avoid. So we want to, as Elizabeth said, we want to get ahead of this and really create the norm. And I drew the analogy when I spoke at the town council last night to a smoke-free air policy. If someone were to light up a cigarette now in a restaurant, there would be multiple people. You wouldn't have to call the police to have them tell it. Customers would say, hey, the norm is we all expect to have this expectation of clean air, and please put your cigarette out. So this is what we're helping to build. So we're being part of that particular part of that particular group. And there's some other things that we're doing, also promoting the attestation among students and so forth. But I think I'll pause right there, and maybe we could show the video.
Great, let's do it.
I wear a face covering because I am a healthcare worker and I work one-on-one with immunocompromised patients.
I wear a face covering for the Carolina community, for my fellow Tar Heels.
I wear a face covering because I want to go back to class.
Because human lives far outweigh the minor inconvenience of wearing a face covering.
Because others are more at risk.
To reduce the transmission of COVID-19.
I wear a face covering to protect my loved ones.
I wear a face covering because I want this pandemic to end.
I wear a face covering for you.
For you.
I wear a face covering for you.
That's really good.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Can someone speak to the attestation? I don't know that we have questions about it, but I know students are aware of it and that they are responding to that. Greg, can you say something about the attestations and how important it is to get those in? And then I'd like to say something about our COVID working group and developing our own school-based attestation.
Sure. Thanks, Elizabeth. So I just received information today from the university about the attestation and the requirement for students on campus. So some of you may know that the acknowledgement is prepared to inform us on the university guidelines on face masks, physical distancing, and health monitoring. And students are required to submit their acknowledgement. There was a deadline of this week, but the university pushed out that deadline because there was a short window of time where it was communicated to students. And so over this past week, a high percentage of students have submitted it. There is a penalty for not submitting your acknowledgement or attestation, which will be that the university will disenroll you from your courses. So it looks like if you haven't already submitted your acknowledgement in Connect Carolina, you still have the opportunity to do that this week. And then the university will look at disenrolling next week. So I did post in the chat information about the face mask part of the attestation, since there was a lot of questions related to face masks and perhaps accommodations. So I would suggest read through the policy. The deadline to submit your acknowledgement was July 27th. So if you haven't done that, I would do that by the close of business today.
Thank you, Greg. I think we also wanted to share that attestations were rolled out for students, but on a coronavirus working group, a group of people who have been problem solving all summer long within the Gilling School on coronavirus related issues for our school. We agreed this should not be a responsibility only for the students to carry, and that we will develop a local Gillings attestation based off the one that we are asking students to complete. Oh, Kurt, did you have something to say about that?
I just mention one thing. The provost, Bluen, last night at the town council addressed this issue of why faculty and staff have not been asked. We may want to review that, but basically the gist was that he felt that because faculty and staff are employees and there are certain conditions of employment to promote safety, he felt that it was not necessary. But at any rate, we talked about the message it sends, that if we're only, it almost makes it look like only students that we're worried about. So I understand the broader messaging and just wanted to pass that on. I just learned that last night.
Yeah, And Elizabeth, if I could just add that on the group of deans, I've advocated for all faculty and staff also having to sign it's basically a commitment statement. It's basically saying we're going to do the right things for the community. And I don't think we should approach this as though, you know, students are the only ones who might do the wrong thing. We all are in this together. And while we are employees and expected to do the right thing, I think just making a statement, a commitment would be very appropriate for all of us.
Thank you. Barb.
I was just going to say that all of the office safety plans and lab safety plans include that you are committing to following these standards, and that includes masks and several other things, keeping your distance and hand washing.
Yes, thank you. If for students on the call who might not know this, all the faculty and staff for the research, they have very detailed research lab safety plans, and now every employee group has an office safety plan. Thank you. There have been a number of questions in the Q&A asking about air quality and air standards, and we are very grateful that we have a world-renowned aerosol scientist on our faculty. And Barb gave us a wonderful 20-minute talk to the COVID group a couple weeks ago. We don't have time for a 20-minute talk today, but she's going to share a little bit about air quality, and probably Brent can tag on about school air quality. Thank you, Barb.
So the best thing that we can do for air quality indoors is and outdoors too, is to reduce the size of the source, right? So there are a couple of key ways that we're doing that. One is by reducing the density. So really reducing the number of people that will be in a classroom together. That reduces the probability that one of those people will be infected. So like the big Rosenau 133 usually holds 100 people, I think, and it'll only hold 24 people. So that reduces the probability of there being an infected person there. The really big thing we're doing to reduce the size of the source is requiring everyone to wear masks. So when you talk or breathe or cough or sneeze or sing, you emit particles from your airways. And that includes some that are so big, we call them droplets, because they just fall within, a few feet of you and maybe contaminate a surface. But most of them are what we call aerosols. So they're really small, submicron. And when you emit them with some force. So they make a little plume in front of your face, right? You can see this on a cold day when you see your breath. That's when those particles take up a lot of water and grow big enough for you to see them. But so you have a plume in front of you, and then that plume mixes with all the room air. And so if you stay distant from that plume, then your concentration is lower, but you could still be exposed, infected, right? If you're across the bar from somebody who's infected, you're in a bar with a lot of people, you could still be infected. But what happens then is if you wear a mask, those particles, when they're coming out of your mouth, are moving pretty fast. And so they can't follow the airstream and go around the mask. Instead, they hit the mask. And so those masks are about 85% efficient at removing the particles you create. And if we all wear them, then the size of the source goes down and the concentration all around the room goes down. That's the most effective thing you can do.
Thank you. Brent, there were some interesting things you said, Barb and Brent, last time we were on a call together about how often the air circulates and in hospitals versus in Gillings versus like in your home, which I found really helpful.
Well, do you want me to go, Brent?
Well, if you want to talk about the differences, I can talk more about it within the school, but probably not the differences between the hospital and your home and our buildings.
Okay. So I live in a typical North Carolina, Chapel Hill, 20-year-old house. And the air exchange rate in my house is about 0.5 per hour. That means every 2 hours, the air in my house is replaced with, cleaner air from outside, right? In a hospital, the air exchange rate is 15 per hour. So 15 times an hour, the air is replaced with clean air, right? Or some kind of air. Hopefully it's clean air. And so the particles that may contain the coronavirus, the higher the air exchange rate, the lower the concentration of particles, if you have the same size of source, right? So in a typical grocery store, it's about 5 to 10 an hour, and in a classroom, typically, it can really vary. Some of them have low air exchange rates and some of them have higher air exchange rates, but if you have forced air, like, an HVAC system like we do, then that's more like 3 to 5 or 6 or something per hour. So it's the air exchange in a building like Rosano is better than the air exchange, a lot better than the air exchange in my house. And the air exchange rates in the labs are a lot better. They're very, the ones in Hooker at least are really high. You want to say something more specific, Brent?
Well, I would just add that all of our lab spaces, including all of Michael Hooker, basically half of our space in Rosenau, because they do have some lab spaces, but the air handler system serves the entire part of the wing, and half of McGavin Greenberg all have 100% fresh air intake. So that, brings in a lot more fresh air than, a lot of systems do. And so what campus is doing in the other parts of the building where there's not 100% fresh air coming in is they're trying to tweak the systems with the computers programming to maximize the fresh air intake. Hopefully that pretty much covers it.
The cost of that, of course, is, if we have to heat or cool, you have to use more energy to do that, or else
Right.
the building ends up being a little bit uncomfortable in one direction or the other. So it's not a long-term thing that we want to do, but in the middle of a pandemic, probably worth it.
Right.
Great. Okay, Chrisanna has some people who are raising their hands to speak, and we will segue to try to answer live questions.
Okay, we have Terry Link here. I'm going to allow them to talk.
Hi, Terry.
Terry, if you could unmute.
Terry, you're still muted.
And if anyone else would like to ask a question, you can raise your hand and we can allow you to talk.
Okay, I think Terry is still on mute. So I'm gonna, while we're waiting for that, I'm gonna go to a question here. Seeing this person says they saw something about students coming back to campus not being required to be tested upon arrival back to Chapel Hill. Although only undergrads are residential, this is a concern for the wider community. Are there any efforts on Gilling's part to pressure the university to increase testing requirements, or at least availability?
Elizabeth, do we have Audrey or David?
No, they are not on the call.
Okay. I mean,
unless they're behind, they're not on the panel.
This is, I'll just comment, this is something that we've debated a lot, and I'm sorry that none of our school experts about this topic are on the call, but basically where most universities are ending up is because testing is only a statement about where you are at that moment in time, and it may be a different answer tomorrow, that it doesn't really provide much assurance that people are healthy. And so trying to test everybody who returns is not cost effective, and it's not, it's a false notion that it will keep people safe. And frankly, we and others all over the country are now running into a lot of problems with shortages of reagents and swabs and all the components of testing. And people are coming to the conclusion that it really needs to be focused on, within our setting, on people who are in the healthcare system, people who are in jobs that are higher risk on campus, and people who have symptoms. So we are not testing. We pushed very hard in the beginning to have a really hard look at this issue. We have infectious disease physicians and epidemiologists and others who really weighed in on this. We had debates about it, and I am comfortable that it is the rational solution or rational answer is not to try to test everybody. And my colleagues at universities that started out saying they were going to do that are finding that they're running into a lot of problems and that they're not able to deliver on their promises.
Thank you. Barbara, I think Jim has some words to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to underscore a couple of things that Barbara has said. One of them is that
Jim, will you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. I'm Jim Thomas. I'm one of the faculty in epidemiology. I study infectious diseases.
And actually, more than that, Jim is really one of the experts in the country on the ethics of pandemics.
So I just wanted to underscore a distinction that Barbara made. There is a use of testing that is at a population level and another at the individual level. And it's at the population level that we're finding testing to be the most useful to monitor trends, geographical patterns, time patterns. And at the individual level, I could get tested today and be found negative, but could still be infected because it takes a while for that virus to be detectable. And I could become infectious tomorrow. So it's not to say that the testing is not useful, but it is less useful at the individual level as a tool for controlling infections on campus.
Thank you. I think we have a comment from Beth Mayer Davis too. Beth, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Beth Mayer Davis, and I chair the nutrition department, and I also serve on the faculty executive committee, which is a campus-wide committee of 12 or 14 people. And we've been meeting very regularly. And recently we heard our chancellor, Kevin Guskiewicz, say that because of so much feedback, that they will go back and give some additional consideration to the idea of doing testing in asymptomatic individuals on a sampling basis. And so to Jim's point, you know, and that was a great distinction between a population level and an individual level. I'm also an epidemiologist, by the way. You know, that on a sampling level, you may be able to get some estimates in terms of long-term trends, which was really, you know, the greatest potential value of that widespread testing, more so than the individual level. So I don't know what will happen with that. I'm sure the group had considered it before, but this was just last week or so. So there may be something more along those lines to come.
Thank you. Okay, Chrisanna, do we have anybody raising their hands?
We do. Yes, we do.
Okay,
I'm going to allow them to talk.
Okay. Who do we have here?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this meeting. I was just actually talking to one of my friends about this. And
could you introduce yourself?
Yeah. My name is Fuad. I'm an incoming MPH student in the Global Health Program. Thank you. So a lot of the students that I talk to, both grad and undergrad, are like, I don't think I've met anyone that's optimistic about campus reopening at all. And so since we have an ethicist on board, I thought, who else should I ask this question to? Like, what's the breaking point for like saying, you know what, actually this was a mistake? Like, you know, is the university just going to keep going full force with everything? Or is there like a point where they're like, you know what, this was a mistake, like we need to close again?
This is a really important question, Fuad. I think we can have two people help answer that. One is like, there's one question about like who makes the decision, and then there's a question about the ethics of the decision. Maybe we'll go with Jim first, and then maybe Barbara will talk about the structure of the university and how these get decided.
Awesome, thank you.
I was going to swing at both of those, but
Okay, you go for it.
We'll let Barbara
Take it away, Jim.
No, after you.
I'm not going to fight you for it.
So the decisions that we're moving forward with, by and large, are made beyond the campus level. They're made at the system level, and they affect the whole 17 campus system. There was a letter to the Board of Governors and Board of Trustees recently coming from the chair of the faculty of our campus, asking that the board give the chancellors more discretion in making those decisions. And I know that our chancellor has been working diligently with the board to become really clear on what our campus can do, what decisions we can make without running them by the board. That's an ongoing process to make that clear. Then I will mention that I've been writing a series of essays, very short essays. They're medium. The website tells me that each of them is only a 2-minute read on ethics of opening campus. So there will, I can put the link out on the chat, and you can go visit those, because I give fuller answers to a lot of questions, this one included. To your question of how do we know when to pull back and how to change things, what I have said is when we reach a point where the distrust is so great that just nothing is working, then clearly we need to pull back, because public health really, even on a campus, functions on the basis of trust and cooperation, working together. That's an essential element. I'm really glad to see the work that Kurt and others are involved in the communications, because the communications is so key to enhancing and building that trust. But I suspect that your question is really more to the point of numbers of, do we have certain numbers of hospital beds? Do we have a certain rate of cases? Is there a certain slope to the curve that the campus is paying attention to? And I don't have answers to those. I do know that they have been talking about those and considering those, and have been hesitant to back themselves into a corner by giving numbers when the questions are so much more complex than just those numbers. So here is where I'm going to step away from the plate and let Barbara step in and see what she would have to say.
Well, thank you, Jim. I think you gave a really good answer. I know people want numbers, but I don't think we're going to get numbers. And from what I've seen from other universities, they're not giving numbers either. What Bob Bluin and Kevin has said is, first of all, if Orange County makes a decision that a public health decision that tells universities to close, or to move people off campus, that will be a factor. If we are putting the town of Chapel Hill increasingly at risk, if numbers of cases start going up further in the town, if hospital beds become really limited and ICU beds the way they have in places like Texas and Florida, and we get reports, so all the deans meet 2 to 3 times a week with the provost, and the head of the healthcare system is there, and he gives us regular updates on how many beds are available, what do things look like. So Bob Bluin, the provost, and Kevin Guskowitz, the chancellor, and others are constantly monitoring those data. If Roy Cooper makes a statement about colleges and universities closing, but fundamentally, we do not have the authority as a campus, and we certainly don't have the authority as a school to make those off-ramp decisions that is a system decision. And there's a new president of the system as of today or yesterday. No, August 1st, sorry. We're all losing track of what day it is, aren't we? We don't know where he stands on these kind of things, but the Board of Governors who really run our system and make many of the decisions about things like tuition and calendars and all sorts of things, they are not ready to give up yet. And I think there's going to be a lot of behind the scenes push and pull about what happens. I think the chancellors in the system are not happy to find out that they're not in charge of the off-ramps at their colleges and universities, because we're in different geographic areas, we have different mixes of students, and they should be in control. So it's a longer answer than you might have wanted and perhaps more unsatisfying. I feel like, and I spent hundreds of hours with these people, and Beth has as well, our chancellor and provost are people who have children of their own, families. They are really agonizing over this. They are not going to keep people here just for the money. And I think it could get down to a showdown between the universities and the system, but I hope it doesn't. I hope they do the right thing. I think there's a good chance there will be a pivot as we look at what's happening in this state and this country. We probably do need to do a reboot, but you know, a lot of this is going to go on behind the scenes. Yeah, we don't play these things out in the Daily Tar Heel or, you know, on Twitter unless we can't talk to people anymore. And so I think there's a lot of conversations happening about what to do. And a letter that was sent to students last week, I think it was on the 27th, that basically gave them permission, if you want to call it that, to get out of contracts for housing and meal plans, was, I think, a step in saying that we don't want as many people on campus. And Kurt certainly heard last night at the session with the town that people in the town are very worried about the impact of you know, increased density on the town. Kurt, do you want to say anything about that?
You know, just a couple things. So one is, you know, the campus, Provost Bloom mentioned that they allowed students to back out of their housing contract like a week ago, and that they're projecting 20 to 30% of students are going to opt not to be on campus, and so that will de-densify the heart of campus. Some are going to stay home, some may stay in apartments in other areas and so forth. The other thing is there was a lot of talk, so that video, people really liked the video, and I think some people commented too on the screen that they liked it. They also, the town council also said, please also portray students interacting in Chapel Hill, because they don't just stay on the UNC campus. And so let's promote the norms. And Chapel Hill has been, the campus has been providing signage and other materials to go on buses throughout town, also in Carborough and in downtown Chapel Hill with the partnership. And so there are a number of, they also asked for future videos in Leadership Agreed. We'll also talk about, you know, our role on campus. A number of things came up last night at the town council where people talked about student parties and fraternities as potentially large gatherings, you know, furthering spread. And I think this is a concern there that people are really looking closely at. The provost did acknowledge that there is, I believe the state law says you can't have more than 25 people gathering, and that the chapel has the ability to enforce and ensure that. And we don't want a heavy-handed response, because we all know about the trying to call police on every issue is not really going to be the answer. But the last thing I would say is there was a number of issues that came up around the North Side neighborhood. And for those of you who haven't lived here, this is a historically African-American community on the just north of Rosemary Street, and there's also the Pine Knolls neighborhood. And several residents from the community mentioned, hey, if students are having parties, there are a lot of elderly African-American residents who are vulnerable, and this could really lead to spread and harm to the community. And they wanted to see stepped up efforts. I think this could be an opportunity for our school or for the university to think about what kind of partnerships could we do in collaboration with existing groups like the Jackson Center, and with other organizations that are engaged working in Northside and other neighborhood areas. So I think this is a thing that I would love to talk. And I know several of the students and faculty and staff live in the neighborhood and might be up for starting to think through what we could be doing.
Thank you, Kurt. And I think Beth has a few words to say, and then we'll move on to another question and maybe topic. Okay, thank you, Beth.
Yeah, just quickly on the off-ramp. First, everything that Barbara said, I completely agree with. That is absolutely not just the particulars, but it's also the sense of the conversation that I'm hearing, just really well described. Barbara, I appreciate you describing at that level of depth. It's really helpful. Two quick things. Also at the council last night, one thing that the provost emphasized with regard to off-ramp criteria had to do with compliance with the community standards, which I thought was interesting. The other thing that I heard for the first time is that there's plans for a dashboard to be made available that anyone would be able to look at for at least some of these metrics to be able to track. And I think that's a very good thing in terms of just communication and transparency. I was extremely pleased to hear that.
Thank you. Okay, Christiana, are there others with their hands up to ask a live question?
Yes. Oh, it disappeared.
Okay.
If anyone would like to chat, please raise your hand.
Okay, we have like tons of really amazing questions in the Q&A. We might circle back to them, I'm not sure. I hate to put those on pause. We have about 25 minutes left, and we need to talk a little bit about classes and academic affairs, which has not come up. And so let's segue over to those, and then we might pivot back to some of your safety questions and questions about how you can get involved, because there are questions about how can I get involved with the research that's going on, and questions about are there any research like, for COVID, and can I participate in those? Okay, Laura, there were some questions that were submitted in advance about classes and academic affairs. I don't know whether you have a few words you want to say before we go to those questions, or should I go directly to the questions?
You can go direct. I'll save time.
Okay. Can you say for high flex classes, and this we might have to turf to asking the faculty on the call to raise their hands, how will instructors manage teaching in person and engaging remote students? So you could help with that, and I think Aya is here, she can help with that.
Yeah.
And then we
So
might ask Stephanie.
I would just say that I want to echo something Barbara said earlier, which is at any time we're going to need to be, as staff, faculty, and students, ready to pivot. And so I think we've tried to say that in all of our communications with our faculty as they're preparing and they're selecting their mode of instruction. That's been on our minds. I think people will be ready when or if the time comes and we need to make a switch. So those that are doing high flex are actually, in the midst of that, they're even more ready, I guess I would say. And so I would call on Aya to maybe say a little bit more about what she's seen. Aya is our instructional design. And I should have said, Laura, I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Academic and Student Affairs. And I was going to turn it over to Aya to say a little bit about what she's been doing to work with our faculty who are in the high flex world and actively working in that area.
Hi, so I'm Aya Williams, Instructional Technology Manager at Gillings, and I've been working with campus level efforts for supporting the shift in courses. For high flex, there's been a lot of training materials made available on the Keep Teaching website. There's also been some live trainings to help our faculty design courses that can be attended either from a classroom, online using Zoom synchronously, or online asynchronously should there be bandwidth issues. So functionally, a high flex class is 3 different modes of teaching the same content at the same time. So my team has been working with faculty in groups and one-on-one in consults to help use the technologies that we have on campus to support this. There's also been upfits in our classrooms so that all of the classrooms can support students attending a class from Zoom.
And I think it would be great to just ask if there's any faculty who want to give an example or two who are on the call who are doing this kind of active work. I personally am teaching 2 classes this fall both of them were set up to be online. So I'm teaching online. So I'm not really doing the same amount of juggling as perhaps maybe some other faculty are. So maybe Chrisana can watch for a hand go up if there's a faculty member who might want to share.
Chrisana.
We don't have any hands up yet, but I think Jim did.
Oh, yeah, I just saw Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so I'm teaching a new course on data in public health, and it was, we're designing it to be an online course in the new master's program to be taught in the spring and then residential in the fall, that is in a couple of weeks. But we have now refitted that to be a remote course. And so I have just finished recording all of those lectures. It'll be a flipped course for those of you who are familiar with that term, where the lectures will occur online. And then when we come together, it'll be online again, but it'll be live, and there will be discussions that are based on the readings and on the lectures that people have seen me do online. So I've been spending more time than I care to admit in converting that course over to that format.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Hey, Laura, what about the grading question? And will we be able to do the same grading stuff that we did in the spring semester?
So what happened last semester, for those of you that are not new incoming students and or faculty staff, during the initiation of the pandemic, we went to what was called an emergency grading policy. Because of the quick shift that we did, we at that point went to a situation where for graduate students in our building, we went to high pass, pass, or fail, dropping the L. For our undergraduate students, it was if they wished to pass, fail. So I think I'm sorry, I just went to a different thought there. So for our undergraduate students, A, B, C, or D were pass, and F was fail. There we go. So in going into the fall, however, there's been a lot of conversation on campus. Our goal has been to minimize disruption for students, especially our undergrads who might have two ways of operating with the grading plan. So what we've done is go with what the college is recommending. Right now, the college is recommending a return to the traditional grading scheme. And so particularly for undergraduates, we will return to the traditional, and the graduate school has recommended that we return to traditional for graduate as well. So right now we're starting the semester. This is just brand news this week. So some faculty are hearing this for the first time if their chairs have not already let them know, because we literally just got the information yesterday. So right now we're going all back to the traditional. If at any point we need to pivot and and rethink that, we certainly know how to do it because we did it last spring. So that'll be how we operate going into the fall.
Great. Chrisana, do we have any hands up?
We do not.
Okay, then I'm going to go on to another question that was submitted beforehand. What might socializing and connecting with other students look like for all of us and for remote students? And maybe Laura, you can help, and maybe Greg can help too.
Yep. I'm going to hand it off to Greg in just a second. But what I will say is that our Office of Student Affairs, Charlita Sims-Evans couldn't be on the call today, but she's overseeing as our Associate Dean, and Greg works really closely with Charlita. Together, they and their staff and our faculty are working really hard to make sure that we have the true Gillings community starting in the fall, where our plans for orientations, our plans for activities, they have the Gillings community in mind at every step. So we have some new things planned we're really excited about. I'll turn it over to Greg to talk a little bit about some of the activities that will be coming your way as students.
Thanks, Laura. If you click on the link that my colleague Deshana just posted in the chat, that will bring you to our Gillings Virtual Student Engagement website, where we're really
we're going to paste that back over into the Q&A because the
Okay.
chat is just for helping us coordinate behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
No, Elizabeth, they can see it if it says all panelists and attendees.
Oh, okay, great. All right.
So this really is how we're motivating all students to stay connected, whether you're in person or remote this semester. So we have links to our student activities, organizations, and community events within the Gillings School, health and wellness activities and events, our focus on our peer-to-peer support, undergraduate and graduate student-led initiatives, in addition to lectures and webinars. Our career services coordinator, Camille Mason, has a lengthy list of webinars and career-related events and programs this semester for you to take advantage of. For example, how to network with faculty, researchers, employers in a predominantly remote situation. And then we also have links to the university at large, their virtual events and resources, and some fun things too, like what we're listening to, what we're reading currently. So those are the kinds of things that we're trying to motivate students to keep engaged this fall semester. Plus, your academic coordinator may be hosting events too, specific to your major, your concentration, or your department this semester, on top of what will be offered via that website.
Right. So this is also a place where if you are on this Zoom call right now and you have an idea for ways to create community and be interactive, please plug away in the Q&A. We'd love to hear from you. We'll also be doing an evaluation. You'll get an evaluation notice. You can share with us your ideas then too. We will be listening out for them.
Let me just add to that, and Charlita mentioned this on the last call. She's also coordinating a series of mental fitness sessions this fall semester, since many students have been sharing levels of stress and anxiety about starting the fall semester and taking classes within the context of a pandemic and everything else that's happening in the world. So she has intentionally coordinated a series of mental fitness sessions that will begin sometime in August and actually go through the entire semester, right up until, including right up until finals. And those will be offered twice a month and recorded for students to help decrease stress and anxiety. In fact, I'll be hosting a mental fitness session in November on managing grief and loss around the holiday times.
Thank you. All right, I have an optimistic question. If conditions improve, could some remote classes switch to a hybrid format?
Yeah, I thought that was a great question. I was really glad to see that come in. I don't think we have the answer, however. I will just be honest. I think we are going to be monitoring everything that's going on, just like, you know, folks on the call here, to see what's happening. But I know our faculty who have signed up originally to do residential teaching, love residential teaching and want to continue that. So if there was a way to make an adjustment midway in the semester, just like we did to go all remote, you know, we're open to that. I think we'll be looking at it. I think the university will have guidance about that as well, what might be possible. So I don't want to overstate that it will happen. I just will say that we'll be monitoring it. I wanted to respond, if I could, Elizabeth, to one of the questions about the planned COVID class that was in the Q&A. If I could?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so the good news about that is we instituted, when the policy was announced for international students 2 Mondays ago, I guess it was, or thereabouts, we quickly acted to get a new course on the books that would fulfill the obligations for our incoming international students to do a residential course, a face-to-face course. And it's a COVID course. It'll be offered on 2 Saturdays. one in September, one in October. The first day will be all about the COVID virology, the disease progression. We have so many experts in the area here, in our building and in School of Medicine as well. Some great colleagues that will sort of give us the backdrop on the disease. And then the second day will be about thinking about the impact on the healthcare system and also on interventions and research that's going on here on campus here at the Gillings School. We have a whole bunch of folks who are doing research, and all the way from individual level research to policy level research and everything in between. We have some wonderful colleagues in our ESE department who are doing amazing work. You heard from Barb Turpin earlier, and she has a number of colleagues that are doing amazing work. So we're gonna just bring the best of the best into that classroom to have an opportunity to hear from them and have students connect with them. There will be, we just learned literally yesterday that we will need to have a face-to-face portion of that course available to help our international students continue to meet the policy requirements, and Greg might want to add something on that when I finish. So we will continue to have a remote, but we will be able to record, and we will believe that this will, like many other classes, will be available to our students who are doing remote instruction as well. So did you want to add anything about the implications for international?
Sure. That course is SPHG 690, section 001. And we'll meet 2 Saturdays, one Saturday in September, one Saturday in October. We're still in the stages of finalizing those dates, so stay tuned for that. So I just wanted to review the last update from the Office of International Student Services and Scholars that was sent to all international students. Continuing students who were in active SEVIS status on March 9th, 2020 continued to be in active status. Continuing active students who are otherwise complying with the terms of their non-immigrant status are allowed to take online courses in excess of the typical regulatory limits and maintain their F1 status while either inside or outside the US. In order to be active in SEVIS, students had to maintain full-time enrollment for spring 2020 with the intent to enroll in fall 2020 and continue to maintain their F1 status requirements. Incoming students, rather, who do not have an active SEVIS record are not allowed to enter the US to pursue a full course of study that is 100% online. At this time, we understand this to mean that for incoming students to enter the US, they must be taking at least one face-to-face in-person course. And there was a question that was submitted: if the university changes in status from in-person hybrid instruction to fully online, if the university changes the operational status from hybrid to fully online during the fall semester, any F1 students who are active in SEVIS will be allowed to maintain their F1 status and can remain in the US if they maintain full-time enrollment.
So Greg is doing an amazing job of filling in for Naya Villarreal, who is also our main liaison with the OISSS office. So thank you, Greg. I will say that this communication will go out to all the academic coordinators. It's brand new, hot off the press. So we're going to get all those details. If you thought you were taking notes, I hope you weren't. We will send those out to the academic coordinators and the chairs, so y'all have that information. The implications mean that this course that we were going to offer, the 690, 2 Saturdays, one in September, one in October, for 10 to 5, we're assuming it's an 8-hour day. It'll be a full-on day on a Saturday for those 2 dates. For 1 credit, will meet the requirements for these new stipulations about our international students. So we think we got it covered, and appreciate all the work that folks are putting in to make sure that we can make that happen.
Great. I believe a question came to Jim Thomas. Jim.
A question came to us all, and I tried to answer it, and I was all thumbs and somehow deleted it. So it came from Mirek Stilbo in nutrition, and he was asking about enforcement of the mask wearing and the social distancing, not just on campus, but in the city on Franklin Street. And did I gather, Kurt, that you were involved in a town gown meeting, and might that have been discussed?
And I think the questioner mentioned that it wasn't fully discussed in the town council meeting last night that UNC was invited to. It's an issue. It's a tension because people feel unsafe and they don't want to. The last thing we need is people calling the police for every one of these kind of infractions. And so we're doing as much preventive stuff. But I think when there are situations that really do escalate to feeling unsafe, that's sort of the challenge. I think the bigger point is that we need to get involved. I think UNC and with the town and really try and give input on the best ways to handle these trickier situations of when there's larger crowds of people that appear to be unsafe, as well as these kind of enforcement issues so that we don't needlessly get law enforcement involved in too many.
And I answered the question about what happens on campus.
I'm sorry, Barbara, you said you thought it was about what's on campus?
No, there was part of the question that was about campus, and I answered that one.
Yeah.
Somebody else asked a similar question too.
Okay. To your point, Kurt, about being better coordination with the city, I wonder if there isn't a place for some of us, AKA you, to interact with, I know, some group of, say, bartenders, about what to look for and approaches they can take to dispersing people.
Yeah, there's a project we have under review right now that goes before the Durham City Council. I know this is not Chapel Hill, but there's a program to set up a group of health ambassadors. That proposal that I've got in, and I'll be collaborating with Yesenia Marino on that. If it gets funded, it goes before the Durham commissioners, and it really is a proactive kind of initiative like that to work with businesses that include bars, restaurants, tiendas, grocery stores, possibly even construction sites, and to do outreach to prevent things from escalating and to work with the health department on that. So I'll be happy to reach out. We have a public health working group call regularly, and I think this is a good point. I will.
Of course,
thank you so much.
Maybe we could help to spread the word about the dangers of being inside bars and restaurants within our campus. I think that would be a good idea. I'm happy to help with that. I think that's one of the less safe things you can do is hang out in a bar or a restaurant, because there's so many people not wearing a mask. And if you're drinking, then, you're probably emitting more and not being as careful.
Great. Okay, I know that Katie Thornsvard, who is our Associate Dean for Finance, also was trying to get a question answered. Katie.
Yeah, so we had a question. We have been informed that labs that bought masks using university funding to be able to work during the last several months will have to pay back from their own pockets. Is this correct? And what counts as university funding? I think this is something that everybody needs to know. So recently they did come out and they said that we all have university leadership. And I heard this directly from university finance leadership. They have developed standards of the PPE. They work very closely with infectious disease experts and others to figure out what are the standards for PPE across the university. And all PPE has to go through Brent in order to get what we need purchased. As part of that, as part of the standard, what they said is that people who have discretionary money can't just go out because they have discretionary money. Let's say like a professorship, and because they have this discretionary money, they can go and order themselves face shields and all sorts of other PPE because they happen to have the money. What the university is trying to make sure is that they're not haves and have-nots, right? It's all about equity and making sure everybody has the same standards of PPE. So as part of that, they said also that applied to grant funding. It is still the case that they want grant funding to work through Brent. Everything needs to work through Brent Wishart and his office. And they will figure out how to order what you need for your grants, because I did go back and I pushed back on the fact that, some of our research may need something that is non-standard PPE for the research. So they do understand that. They understand that we have that situation, School of Medicine and other areas that are doing specific research that may have those needs, that they will allow us to get non-standard PPE in those cases, but again, still have to work through Brent. As far as the people will have to pay back out of their own pockets, so, you know, they did make that statement. If people go out and they buy stuff that they haven't procured through the normal process, yes, they will require people to pay that back. But what I want to assure everybody is these instructions just came out. And, you know, if somebody comes and tries to get people to reimburse things where they were operating in good faith in the past and tries to get them to pay that back, I will argue that
we will support
very
it.
strongly. And,
That's
you know,
not-
we can't abide by guidelines that we weren't informed of. So I do want everybody to know that, you know, I will argue that on our behalf, but we do need to make sure going forward that we are working through Brent. They haven't figured out the process yet for getting the charges back to a grant if it's something that is a direct cost on the grant. I volunteered to work with my counterparts in School of Medicine and pharmacy and other areas to figure out what could be the mechanism to get those charges back onto the grant. Because what we don't want to have happen is a few months from now, we get a bill saying, hey, you owe the university for this non-standard PPE, and the grant's ended and we can't get it back on the grant. So rest assured, I'm on this. And, you know, if you have an issue, let me know. But I do need to make sure everybody knows if they don't work through Brent, that purchasing will see the orders and they'll cancel them if they have time to cancel them, or they'll make you reimburse. So let's just all make sure we're working through the proper channels.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we are down to 1 minute. I can't believe the time is gone, but we have one question I think we need to take on the air about student fees. The student notices that many of the fees are for things they won't be able to use, like Carolina Performing Arts, athletics, student dining. Was there any consideration of waiving such fees this semester?
Yeah, so that is not under our control. I mean, we have certainly shared the feedback that we've gotten from our students up to the university, but, you know, the university is under the guidance of the Board of Governors, the state system, I mean, the UNC system office. And so, you know, they definitely are hearing this feedback. As of right now, they're planning to charge the usual tuition and fees. And I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that.
Thank you. We can't make a better answer, I'm afraid. All right, before we close, I want to say thank you to everybody for first submitting their questions in advance, for raising your hands, for putting questions here on the Q&A, and if you will, fill out the evaluation so we can make sure that when we do these again, when we meet again, we are meeting your needs. We apologize for not getting to everybody's question. I want to direct your attention in this moment. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to direct your attention to our Gillings, UNC Gillings Return to Campus roadmap. We try to keep this up to date as well as we possibly can. This has Gillings specific information. You'll find information here for students, for faculty and staff, floor plans, general information. We have some pretty extensive FAQs there that we have written up following some of these coronavirus COVID calls. I believe we have posted the COVID conversation that we had several weeks ago with students. And let's see, we do have another date on the books for another COVID conversation. Grace or Chrisanna, can you remind me what that date is?
Grace, could you answer? I'm not sure.
I have it, August 24th. So keep your eyes out for an invitation for that. I also wanted to direct your attention to the Keep Teaching web page. This is for our faculty who have been doing this amazing work of doing their classes in multiple formats. And finally, the university's web page, Carolina Together, that's the roadmap for fall. there's tons of information on these pages, and we can probably get your questions answered there if we weren't able to get to them through this format today. So thank you. Any final comments from you, Barbara, before we close it down?
Thank
Or
you,
anybody?
Elizabeth. And thanks to everybody who's here, and we want to keep up the questions, and we'll keep track of them and do our best to answer them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.